Is this just a bunch of random events? Or is it the final wake-up call ringing for all of us? When the world starts roaring, the sky turns dark, the ground cracks open, the oceans rage, and animals go completely wild, we can't ignore the feeling that something big is waking up. Nature isn't quiet anymore. It's shaking, erupting, swallowing everything, like the earth itself is fighting back. From mountains suddenly blowing up, strange clouds crawling down like they're alive, floods dragging everything away in the night, to animals gathering in ways we've never seen. 7 events, 7 pieces of the puzzle hitting us fast, with no warning and no full explanation. Have you seen those videos yet? Do you really believe it's all just coincidence? Or behind all that chaos is an ancient whisper, a warning that's been written down long ago? If this isn't random, then the scariest question is, what stage of the story are we in right now? And what's waiting ahead once we figure out these signs that we'll decode right after this? So don't miss a thing, okay? And I won't keep you waiting long, because right now we're going to start with 1. A volcano in the Philippines suddenly explodes. In just a moment, what used to be a peaceful scene turned into pure hell right before our eyes. A mountain that seemed to be sleeping quietly suddenly roared, erupted, tore open the sky, and left that chilling feeling that nature isn't willing to stay silent anymore. And when you watch those videos, it hits you hard. This isn't just another news story. It's one of those moments that makes folks stop and face how fragile life really is. That mountain is Taal Volcano, sitting in the middle of a big lake in Batangas Province, Philippines, only about 30 miles from the capital, Manila. In a split second, from what looked like a calm crater, Taal blew up fiercely, shooting black smoke and chunks of rock into the air like a giant hand reaching up from deep in the earth to grab the sky. The videos going around show the exact moment light vanished, the sun got blocked out, and everything around sank into a deadly gray. Geologists spoke up quick. They talked about the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates keep crashing into each other, and hundreds of small earthquakes happen every year. Local folks are used to that low rumbling under their feet, used to the constant unease. But this time was different. Pressure that had built up too long finally burst, forcing thousands to leave their homes by the lake and run in panic, with no one sure if the mountain was done erupting or just getting started. The black smoke column rose to 7,000 feet, carrying ash and hot rocks dozens of miles away, turning day into night. The blasts sounded like endless thunder. The ground shook hard. Birds scattered in chaos. Wild animals fled without direction. Looking at those pictures, it's not just amazing, it's downright eerie, like some ancient creature waking up after sleeping for thousands of years. The Bible, Luke 21:11, says, "There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven." And in Revelation, images of thunder, lightning, and earthquakes come up as a cold reminder. No explanations, no comfort, just a quiet question about what it all means. Of course, science calls this normal geological activity for a country with more than 20 active volcanoes. But when things happen more often, when the eruptions get fiercer and harder to predict, that normal starts to feel shaky. Because nature doesn't change randomly, and people can't stay out of the consequences. The mountain has woken up. And with the earth starting to roar like that, a bigger worry is quietly spreading. Will the sky stay quiet? Or are those strange clouds creeping down the real messengers of what's coming next? 2. A hiking and camping group unexpectedly spots a strange cloud. In what seems like ordinary footage from a mountain hike, there's one moment that makes you stop and stare. not because of any loud bang or fire, but because of the eerie quiet right before everything gets swallowed up. From up high, a thick white cloud suddenly comes pouring down, not drifting or fading away, but falling like a waterfall hanging between sky and earth. When you watch that video again, you can really feel it. That chill down your spine hits you before your brain even catches up. The spot is Mount Jefferson in Oregon, USA, a mountain that's 10,495 feet tall in the Cascade Range, known for strong winds and tough terrain. It's a place folks go to camp and breathe in that fresh air, figuring nature there is pretty gentle. But right there, the sky suddenly moves like it's alive, and this odd cloud starts creeping down the slope, completely shattering that fragile sense of safety. In the viral video, the dense cloud stretches hundreds of feet wide, moving slowly at about 5-10 miles an hour. But it carries this heavy feeling that's hard to shake. It covers everything in a cold mist, turning the mountain forest into a foggy maze with no way out. At first, there are a few excited cheers, but soon it goes quiet as the people there realize they're facing something that's not just regular weather. Looking back at those frames, you get why excitement can turn into unease in just seconds. The Bible has a warning that gives a lot of folks chills when you think about it next to this. Matthew 24-30 says, "Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, with power and great glory." Those words aren't describing an ordinary cloud. It's a sign that makes everyone look up in fear and wake up. Still, some people call this a fog spill, a kind of fog overflow caused by foreign winds, something that's happened in the Jura Mountains in Switzerland or on Mount Washington in New Hampshire. Science says it's just differences in temperature and pressure, but arguments start when these things keep showing up more often, in far apart places, with shapes that are harder to predict. Some believe it's just nature, others see it as a sign, and plenty are starting to feel uneasy about how fast the sky is changing. No matter which side you're on, one thing's hard to deny. The sky isn't just something to look at anymore. It's sending these vague but heavy messages. That cloud didn't destroy anything or hurt anyone, but it covered everything, leaving people lost and forcing them to stop. And if a cloud can quietly swallow a whole mountain peak like that, it leaves you wondering, when the waters start rising, is there anything left that can hold strong? 3. Floodwaters, rising fast, sweeping away homes and cars. Cries of terror tore through the night. It wasn't the wind or thunder, but the desperate screams of a woman as the floodwaters rushed in like a wild beast let off its chain. In just minutes, the familiar street turned into a raging river. Homes shook, cars were lifted up, and everything got dragged away without mercy, leaving people standing helpless in pure fear. That was the Guadalupe River in Kerr County, Texas, in the United States. It's a river over 230 miles long, calm and gentle most of the time like a ribbon of silk, but with heavy rain from the hills, it can rise suddenly without warning. In recent floods, the water level shot up 26 feet in just hours, forcing thousands to drop everything and flee in the dark, carrying only their fear and hopeless prayers. The rushing water tore along at 20 to 30 miles an hour, dragging wooden homes hundreds of feet long like they were kids' toys. Cars flipped over, crashing into each other with the groan of twisting metal. Shouts echoed for a while, then faded under the roar of the water. In a disaster like that, there's no difference between rich and poor, strong or weak. Everyone seems small against the cold power of the flood. The Bible warned about times like this long ago. Luke 21:25 says clearly, "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea." It's not just a picture. It's that real feeling of chaos when people panic as nature gets out of control. Going further back, Genesis 7:11 describes a terrifying moment. All the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Water didn't just come from rivers. It poured from everywhere, like the whole order of nature turned upside down. What we're seeing today makes many folks shiver when they think about those old words. Some say this is just climate change, a scientific thing with no tie to God. But experts admit it too. Floods are happening more often and getting stronger, turning yearly events into huge disasters that hit one after another like never before. That matchup makes a lot of people wonder, is it just chance or part of a warning that's been there all along? If the Bible once used water to cleanse the world, is God using it now to wake us up, to remind us that Judgment Day is getting closer? When everything you own can be swept away in one night, where do you put your trust? And if the flood takes it all, are those man-made walls hiding something even more awful that's waiting to come out? 4. An explorer discovered a strange spider web wall. In the video footage from his shaking headlamp, I see him stop in his tracks. Ahead of him isn't rock or a cave wall. It's this unbelievably thin wall that gives a little when he touches it, like one good push could go right through. But that very fragility makes the air feel ice cold, because something deep down tells you this thing shouldn't be broken. The spot is a sulfur cave near the Albania-Greece border, deep and dark, damp, stretching for miles into thick blackness. It's a place that usually draws only seasoned cave explorers, but now it's getting attention because they found that wall isn't stone, it's a massive spider web, covering about 1,140 square feet, woven from thousands of layers of silk stacked on top of each other. Reports say more than 111,000 spiders worked together to build this structure, turning thin silk into something downright scary and strong, solid enough that even a grown person gets shaky hands touching it. Spider silk is light and delicate on its own, but in huge numbers like this, it gets surprisingly tough, like a living skin wrapping the cave, used to catch swarms of young flies that thrive in the sulfur environment. Science explains it as adaptation to the surroundings. In harsh conditions, spiders that are usually loners have to team up, building big webs to make hunting easier and protect the group. It's a survival response, logical and measurable. But the question that gives a lot of folks the chills is still out there. Why did they gather on a scale never recorded before, like they were fleeing some unseen threat? The Bible offers another view. Revelation 9:3 says, "And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth." The picture of small creatures emerging from darkness, granted unusual power, leads many to believe animals will serve as warning signs in the end times. Science calls it instinct. Faith calls it a signal. One side relies on data and adaptation, the other on prophecy and symbolism. Two different explanations, but they meet at one thought-provoking point. Animals sense things that humans often realize too late. So what do you think? Is this just a rare biological event or a quiet hint about what's coming? If God once used water, fire, and wind to warn mankind, is he now using creatures themselves to send a message? When spiders build their wall in the dark, could that be the last reflex before something bigger? And if deep in the ocean, other creatures are hiding within each other, what dark secret will be revealed next? 5. Strange creature found inside a fish's mouth. This story starts with a real shocker. At a quiet freshwater lake that seemed so peaceful, a fisherman was pulling in his last net of the day when he froze in place. Right in front of him wasn't just an unusually big fish, but inside its wide-open mouth was another creature, long and wriggling hard, like a second monster trapped inside the first one. It happened at a big freshwater lake inland, where the water can get dozens of feet deep and the ecosystem is pretty closed off. Folks around there say the lake has always been calm, mostly home to catfish and freshwater eels. Nobody expected something like this to come up from those still waters and shake up the whole community. The video shows a heavy fish with an oddly large body and a long eel, several feet, tucked right in its mouth, head sticking out, body twitching strong. The scary part is the eel was still alive, still fighting back, like it refused to get swallowed. How could a freshwater creature survive in a spot like that? That moment didn't just make people curious. It gave them a creepy feeling that's hard to shake, like watching nature's rules get bent. Biologists were quick to explain it. They think it might be a giant freshwater eel or a catfish that bit off more than it could chew, leading to this rare, stuck prey situation. Some other ideas point to weird hunting behavior from changes in the environment. But even the experts admit the eel's size, how it stayed alive, and the way it was found are super rare in freshwater systems. The Bible once warned about creatures in the water that don't fit the usual order. Leviticus 11:10 says, "But all creatures in the seas or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to regard as unclean." When you read that verse now, in light of this, it sounds like a strong warning, not just for the deep ocean, but even for waters that seem harmless. A lot of people push back on connecting it that way, saying it's just a rare biology thing blown up by human fear. They point out that freshwater lakes have their own secrets. No need to bring in anything spiritual. But others say when weird stuff like this starts showing up in the most familiar places, that's when the warnings hit home clearer. What do you think? Is it just a biological fluke, or something worth thinking deeper about? When even a freshwater lake, a symbol of life and nourishment, shows scary sights like this, we can't keep ignoring it. The Lord is letting hidden things come to the surface. And if the depths of a lake aren't peaceful anymore, then way down in the earth below, what's coiling up waiting to come out, like an even bigger nightmare ahead? 6. Dozens, even hundreds, of pitch-black snakes twisted together in a baffling way. The shocking start comes in just a few quick seconds. From a small hole in the forest floor, a man suddenly reaches down and pulls up a big, dark, wriggling mass. Dozens of snakes, all tangled tight like some giant, many-headed creature yanked out of the dark. That moment takes your breath away, because nobody expects the ground that looks so harmless to spit out something that creepy. This happened in a damp forest in Alabama, in the United States, where thick layers of leaves and soft soil hide all kinds of crawling creatures. The area is known for black racer snakes, long, fast, all-black ones that often hide in ground holes to stay out of the cold and hunt for food. But no one ever thought a little hole like that could hold a whole living knot twisting around like this. In the video, one snake after another comes up, each about 5 to 6 feet long, their bodies woven together, tails thrashing wildly, making a chaotic mess that gives you goosebumps. The bunch doesn't come apart. They stick together like some invisible force is holding them, fighting hard as they're pulled into the light. It's downright eerie, like someone just opened a tiny gate to a little piece of hell. The Bible mentions snakes many times as a warning sign. In Genesis 3:15 it says, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." And in Numbers 21:6, "Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died." When you put those verses next to the sight of a bunch of snakes rising up from the earth, they sound like a direct warning about sin and punishment. Biologists were quick to explain that this is called a mating ball, a group mating behavior that happens when lots of males gather around one female during breeding season. They say the weather and wet conditions made an unusually large number crowd into the same hole. But even the scientists admit that a group this big and packed so tight is extremely rare, enough to give anyone who sees it the chills. Even if science can explain it, that image still feels like a strong warning. Snakes, an old symbol of the fall into sin, don't show up that thick and fierce by accident. It's as if God is using the ground itself to remind us that things buried away will one day come to light. And if one small hole can spit out a nightmare like that, what might be hiding in the quiet places around us, waiting for the next moment to burst out? 7. A huge column of water suddenly erupts into the sky, no warning at all. Out of a quiet little pond tucked against sandstone cliffs, a massive column of water shoots straight up, breaking the silence with a roar like thunder from deep underground. It leaves you stunned, because nobody expects something so powerful from such a small body of water, enough to shake the whole area. This happened at Crystal Geyser in Utah, USA, where the pond covers just a few acres, with a gravel bottom and dry cliffs all around. For years, the place was pretty much still, with only wind and sun passing through quietly. But in just seconds, the surface cracks open, and water blasts upward like the Earth's own pressure finally letting go. The video shows the water shooting way above the frame, probably 100 to 150 feet high, with a loud rumble echoing off the cliffs and carrying for miles. The spray swirls white and thick, steam rising in clouds, making it look almost magical and hard to believe. People watching cheer in excitement but step back a little scared, like the planet itself is gasping and crying out. In Revelation 21:1, it says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more." When you think about that verse next to this exploding water column, some folks believe it's more than just nature. It's a final warning about big changes coming, where everything familiar won't stay the same. Scientists explain it as a cold geyser caused by CO2 gas building up underground, creating pressure that pushes the water out now and then. To them, it's a rare but understandable physical process. Still, what bothers a lot of people is why these kinds of events seem to happen more often now, even in places thought to be calm and steady. Some say it's just coincidence, and modern science has it all figured out. Others see a deeper message, that the earth is being shaken to remind us to look beyond numbers and models. Where do you stand on that? Seeing water burst from the ground like a trumpet blast. This event doesn't just amaze, it stirs up faith in those open to it. Water, a symbol of life and cleansing, exploding in dry land, reminds us that renewal often comes with upheaval. With 7 signs now showing up, the pieces fit together, and it's no longer random. It's a serious wake-up call, urging us to pause, reflect, and get our hearts ready for what's coming soon. So, we've just gone through 7 events full of the Lord's warnings about the end times. Which one made you stop and think the most? Let us know in the comments below. 7 phenomena, 7 pieces of the puzzle. When you put them side by side, they're no longer just random videos scrolling by on social media. They start connecting, building on each other, and pressing in like a map that's slowly coming into focus. The ground shakes, the sky goes dark, the waters rage, animals panic, the deep sea reveals strange things, the earth spews out nightmares, and finally, springs of water burst open like life's veins being torn apart. Nothing stays still. No place feels completely safe anymore. The volcano erupting is the first big blow to whatever steady ground we thought we had. The earth, something we figured we'd tamed, shakes, spits fire and ash, and reminds us we're just living on a thin crust. When the ground starts fighting back, it's not just geology, it's the first wake-up call. Then the sky answers. Clouds don't drift anymore. They crawl down and swallow mountaintops like they're alive. The sky isn't the familiar shelter it used to be. It turns into a curtain that blurs what we see and what we believe. When people look up and can't see clearly, that's when direction starts slipping away. Water doesn't flow gently like it once did. Floods rise, sweep away homes, cars, everything, wiping out lines between rich and poor, status or power. Water, the symbol of life, becomes a destroyer, drowning cries and pleas in the dark. When water turns angry, we realize we're all equal in helplessness. Animals aren't acting normal either. Spiders, usually loners, team up to build huge webs, like they're fleeing something invisible. Fish and eels twist together in horrible knots, showing chaos under the water. Snakes coil into thick black masses, rising from the ground like old memories waking up. When animals change their ways, it's often a sign that humans only understand later. And then, even the quietest springs explode. A column of water shoots straight up, breaking years of silence. No more trickling, no more seeping, just erupting like a final statement. The source of life itself won't stay quiet anymore. When you string them together, all four basic elements of creation are shaken. Earth trembling, sky darkened, water raging, living things deformed. It's not separate pieces. It's a chain that builds, just like the Bible describes the last days, starting mild, then piling on, then unstoppable. Matthew 24:7-8 warned about this long ago. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. The scariest part isn't the disasters. It's that last line, they're only the beginning. Luke 21:11 fills in more of the picture. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events, and great signs from heaven. Fearful events, great signs. Not everything fits neatly into charts or formulas, because the Bible said ahead of time there'd be things beyond what we're used to. And when these things reach their peak, Revelation paints a scene with nowhere to hide. Revelation 16:18-20 says, "Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it has ever occurred since mankind has been on earth. So tremendous was the quake. The great city split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. Every island fled away, and the mountains could not be found." It's not just shaking. The whole old order falls apart. This big picture isn't here to feed curiosity. It's meant to weigh on the conscience. Nature doesn't rage for no reason. In the Bible, it's often a mirror of how humanity is doing morally. When people ignore justice, choke the truth, and worship power, creation groans in their place. The urgency doesn't come from the telling. It comes from the pace of the events themselves. They're happening more often, stranger, harder to brush off. Time isn't moving slow anymore. The gaps between signs are getting shorter, like drumbeats speeding up before the final charge. These 7 phenomena aren't meant to spread blind fear. They're to make us stop and see the whole picture. As the end-time scene takes shape, the question isn't, "Is this real?" anymore. It's, "Where will I stand when it's finished?" In the Bible, signs always come with a call, not to panic, but to stay alert, not to run away, but to repent, change, and turn back. When time feels squeezed, every choice matters more. Every indifference gets riskier. If these really are pieces of the last days, the most urgent thing isn't explaining them. It's getting the heart ready, because once the picture is complete, there won't be time to ask why. There'll only be one question left. Did we listen or not? Under everything we've just seen, please remember one key thing. These signs aren't random at all. They're not just scattered events from history or meaningless troubles. They're repeated warnings from God, getting clearer and louder as time runs short. The Bible mentions this in Matthew 24:6-8. "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars." All these things are just the beginning of birth pains. The world is falling apart bit by bit, not only in how society is breaking down, but deep in people's hearts too. Darkness is quietly, but cruelly, swallowing up humanity through lies, indifference, violence, and turning away from the truth. The Bible warns about this in 2 Timothy 3:1. 2. In the last days, there will be very difficult times, because people will love only themselves and their money, be boastful and proud. Those words aren't just sitting in an old book anymore. They're playing out right in front of us every day. But even in that dark picture, there's still a flicker of hope. God doesn't warn us to destroy us. He does it to save us. He's calling people to wake up before it's too late, to turn back to Him with repentance and faith. Ezekiel 18:23 says, "Do I take any pleasure in the death of the wicked? Declares the sovereign Lord. No, I want them to turn from their ways and live." The door to His grace is still open, but nobody knows when it will close. The end times are closer than we think, not to scare us, but to make each of us ask, where do I stand with God? Revelation 3:20 puts it plainly, here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in. In this chaotic world, the only sure place to turn is faith in Jesus Christ. He's the solid refuge, the lifesaver in the middle of this raging storm. So please, don't just scroll past these signs like some shocking news story and then forget about it. Stop for a moment, take it in, and pray. Ask yourself if you're truly ready, if you've really turned back to the Lord, or if you're still putting it off. Like Amos 4:12 warns, Israel, prepare to meet your God. That call today isn't just for one nation, it's for all of us. If this touches you, leave a prayer down in the comments, or just share your honest thoughts about what's happening. Don't keep it to yourself. You never know. Your words might wake up another soul. And if you don't want to miss the powerful warnings in the next videos, please like, share, and subscribe so we can stay alert together in these last days. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and may the Lord bring His light to each of us in these dark times.
Oh my gosh!
Have you ever wondered what would happen if the world didn't wait until New Year's to fall apart? In just a few short days, right before Christmas, the planet got hit hard. An explosion ripped through a European highway. A nursing home in America went up in flames. An Asian market burned to ashes. An entertainment icon caught fire. Shots rang out in a government building. Millions of believers poured into the streets, and police cracked down on crowds right in the heart of Europe. 7 events, 7 blows in a row. No breaks in between. Do you feel like time is getting squeezed? Are you sure these are just random news stories? Or is it a pattern that's being set up? If chaos is speeding up right before the holy season, what's waiting ahead? Don't jump to conclusions, because pretty soon, all the pieces will start coming together. So don't miss a single bit of information. Okay. And I won't keep you waiting long. We'll dive deep together into the hidden truths behind these chaotic events. Let's get started with 1. Horrifying tanker explosion in Caserta, Italy. Sky lights up in flames. Everything shakes. Boom! The screen shakes hard. And right at the start of this viral video, the whole sky ahead gets ripped open by a huge fireball. Did you hear that instinctive yell? I wasn't there, but watching those shaky frames, it feels like I'm standing right on the A1 highway when hell suddenly breaks loose in broad daylight. The video was shot from a car a few hundred yards from the scene. It shows traffic moving along, then everything stops dead. A quick crash, the LPG tanker flips over, and just seconds later, a bright white flash hits before a massive column of fire swallows the road. Did you notice how eerily quiet it is for a moment before the blast roars like thunder right through the screen? Thick black smoke rolls up, blanketing the sky for miles around. The camera pans fast, showing the concrete roadway torn apart. Part of the overpass ahead collapsed, cars left in the lanes like tossed aside toys. Hundreds of drivers stuck. The A1 toward Rome shut down completely for hours, and the whole Caserta area filled with that strong gas smell. No deaths reported, but that strange everyone's okay part actually gives a lot of folks the chills. After hours of closure, Italian police and firefighters announced the early findings. The LPG tanker had a head-on sideswipe with a heavy truck that lost control, causing a gas leak. Even a tiny spark from metal scraping was enough to set off the chain reaction blast. Strong winds in the area made the fire spread faster than expected, collapsing part of the overpass structure and burning up the road below. Everything, according to the report, can be explained by engineering and physics, but watching that video again around this Christmas season, Many people pause and think, the Bible mentions signs like this in Luke 21:11. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events, and great signs from heaven. And in Matthew 24:7, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. These words don't prove anything, but they plant an uncomfortable question in your mind. Is it all just coincidence? The video ends in black smoke and sirens blaring non-stop, but that uneasy feeling doesn't stop there. If one sudden explosion can turn a major European highway into rubble in seconds, what happens when similar things show up somewhere else? And when we turn to stories here in America, will the next one give us enough time to brace ourselves? 2. Horrific explosion at nursing home in Bristol, Pennsylvania. Fierce flames swallow everything, many dead and injured. On the morning of December 23rd, while many families were still getting ready for a peaceful end-of-year holiday, a gas explosion ripped through the Silver Lake Healthcare Center nursing home in Bristol, Pennsylvania. No warning, no time to react, just a sharp blast that turned what was supposed to be a safe haven for the elderly into a pile of rubble, leaving at least 2 people dead and dozens more hurt in the chaos. Bristol is a small town along the Delaware River, less than 20 miles from Philadelphia, where life usually moves at a slow, familiar pace. But that morning, in the cold below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, leaking gas from the heating system had quietly built up inside the 2-story building. When the explosion hit, the back section, nearly 30 feet high, collapsed completely. Flames shot up fiercely, engulfing the living areas of more than 100 elderly residents, the most vulnerable folks in our society. The sound of the blast echoed more than 2 miles away, making nearby residents think a bomb had gone off. Over 50 ambulances, along with helicopters and rescue teams from Bucks County, rushed to the scene in harsh conditions. Search dogs and sonar equipment were brought in to look under the rubble piled meters thick. 21 people were pulled out alive, including 5 in critical condition from severe burns and serious injuries. We look at those numbers and realize that behind them are lives turned upside down in just a few short seconds. Pennsylvania officials said the initial cause was a gas leak combined with an old heating system, leading to an uncontrollable explosion. Governor Josh Shapiro, who was at the scene, called it a Christmas tragedy, as thick black smoke covered an area nearly a square mile wide, and hundreds of nearby homes had to be evacuated. For many of us, that sight isn't just an accident, it's a direct hit to our sense of safety, which was already pretty fragile. The Bible has warned about times like this. In Luke 21, verses 25 through 26, it says, "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world." And Revelation 16:18 makes it clear. Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it has ever occurred since mankind has been on earth. So tremendous was the quake. These words ring out like a warning bell, not to blame anyone, but to remind us. Of course, many people say this is just the result of poor maintenance and rundown infrastructure. But the fact that this tragedy happened right before Christmas and struck the weakest among us means the debate can't be wrapped up that easily. Is this really just a technical failure, or a reminder that chaos is creeping into even the places we thought were safest? The event in Bristol isn't just sad news. It's a clear warning. When order starts to crack, no one is left untouched. And if America is already burning like this, then what waits on the other side of the ocean might leave us speechless in ways we can't even imagine. 3. Terrible fire at Pasar Pagi Pemalang, Central Java, Indonesia. Hundreds of stalls burned down. Chaos in the middle of the night. The video starts with scenes that feel so familiar from everyday life. Pasar Pagi Pemalang in Central Java, Indonesia. The place where every afternoon folks are busy buying and selling. getting ready for the end-of-year holidays. Clothing stalls packed close together, warm yellow lights shining on rolls of fabric, the air noisy but normal in a way that no one would guess. Just minutes later, everything would change completely. From what's shown in the video and local reports, around 5:30 inches the evening on December 2-3 local time, a big fire suddenly broke out in the clothing section of the market. The flames started at one small stall, but they quickly got out of control. Strong winds blowing through the area turned flammable things like cloth, wood, and plastic into fuel, spreading the fire at maybe 10 feet per second. Pictures from the scene show flames shooting up as high as 40 feet, covering nearly 2 acres of the market. Shouts rang out through thick black smoke as vendors panicked and ran for safety, trying to grab whatever they could save. More than 30 fire trucks from the Semarang area were rushed in, and it took almost 3 hours to get the fire under control. The damage was really bad. Over 200 stalls were completely burned, with losses estimated at around $5 million. Luckily, no one died, but dozens of people got burns or smoke inhalation, and many ended up in the hospital, worn out. Local police said, unusual winds made the fire spread faster than anyone expected. The early cause looks like an electrical short, but people are still asking questions. Some think it's just a common accident in traditional markets. But a lot of folks are wondering, especially since it happened right before Christmas, with other disasters happening one after another around the world. What do you think? Is this just an accident or part of some bigger warning we're seeing? In that light, many connect this to fire images in the Bible. Revelation 18:8 says, "Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine. And she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her." And Psalm 97:3 adds, "Fire goes before him and burns up his enemies all around." No matter how you look at it, the fire at Pasar Paji Pemalang isn't just an economic disaster. It's a wake-up call about how fragile our everyday world can be. And when fire breaks out in what feels like the safest place, it makes you wonder, could this be a sign of even bigger troubles ahead? Next, moving from the real flames in Indonesia, we'll turn to another kind of fire, where the line between symbol and reality starts getting scary. 4. Fiery dragon burns at Disneyland. Symbol of evil destroyed in flames. A sign of judgment. The holiday spirit filled Disneyland in late December. Christmas lights sparkled everywhere. Music played, and kids and grown-ups alike waited for the familiar phantasmic show by the man-made river. It was a moment of joy, childhood memories, and that safe feeling where you think only magic and laughter exist. And right in that seemingly harmless setting, something unforgettable happened. From videos taken by guests, on the evening of December 22nd, during the show's big climax, the 45-foot Maleficent dragon suddenly had a problem. At first, it breathed fire just like it was supposed to, but seconds later, the flames got out of control. The dragon's head caught fire badly. The flames spread fast down its body, turning it into a column of fire nearly 60 feet tall that lit up the whole Tom Sawyer Island, over an acre wide. The excited crowd quickly turned panicked. Disney staff kept signaling everyone to leave. People ran in all directions looking for exits, and thick black smoke covered the performance area. No one was hurt, but the show was canceled right away, leaving clear shock on the faces of those who saw it. The dragon, the symbol of evil in the fairy tale, didn't finish its role. It ended in fire. For many people of faith, that picture brings to mind familiar symbols from the Bible. Revelation 12:3 describes a dragon as a picture of the power that opposes God. And then Revelation 20:10 says plainly, "And the devil, who deceived them, was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. They will be tormented day and night, forever and ever." In that light, the dragon catching fire right before Christmas, the day we remember the Savior's birth, becomes a picture that feels full of meaning, not just a stage accident. But police and Disney officials gave a completely different explanation. They said it was a technical failure in the fire-breathing system, combined with flammable materials and fuel pressure, causing an uncontrolled blaze. Two ways of understanding the event exist side by side. One is technical analysis. The other is a reading full of symbolism and faith. That difference quietly raises the question of which eyes we choose to see the world with. No matter which view you take, the image of the dragon burning up in the happiest place on earth is still something that makes you think. For believers, it's a reminder that evil, even when dressed up in entertainment or fairy tales, can't stand in the end against the light. And when a symbol falls in flames, faith is stirred not by fear, but by awareness. And coming up next, from the blazing symbol in the theme park, we'll move to an event where fire is no longer just a picture, but real violence in everyday life. 5. Mad gunman at Wilmington, Delaware. DMV hero cop loses his life in bloody violence. Shooting spree during peak hours. On the afternoon of December 23rd, a serious shooting took place at the DMV in Wilmington, Delaware, when a 44-year-old man suddenly attacked law enforcement, killing a state trooper. What was thought of as a safe government office turned into a scene of violence in just a few short minutes. According to authorities, Wilmington, a city only about 30 miles from Philadelphia, was busy with folks wrapping up end-of-year paperwork. The gunman was reportedly upset with the administrative process, brought a weapon, and approached the area where police were working. Employees and customers had to duck under desks and behind counters when the shots rang out. Details confirm that the state trooper was shot from behind while on duty. Even though he was hurt, he still managed to push employees and civilians out of harm's way before getting hit by a second bullet. After about 5 minutes of gunfire, quick response officers shot and killed the suspect. Another officer was injured and taken to the hospital. He's now in stable condition. The aftermath left the area within a half-mile radius of the DMV completely locked down, and the entire Delaware DMV system temporarily closed for the investigation. Governor Matt Meyer arrived at the scene and said briefly, "We have lost a hero. This sacrifice will not be forgotten." The Christmas spirit in the area was immediately overshadowed by a heavy and silent mood. From a faith perspective, many people connect this event to warnings in the Bible. Matthew 24:12 says, "Because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold." And 2 Timothy 3:1-2 warns about the last days. There will be difficult times, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, without love for God, sudden violence, cold hearts, and the lone sacrifice of someone keeping order. It all feels like a strong indictment of modern society. Of course, opposing views quickly came up. Some experts say this was just an individual's mental health issue and shouldn't be given spiritual or end times meaning. But others ask, why are these extreme acts increasing right during days that should be about peace and love? Are we seeing random events or signs of a deeper moral decline in people? What can't be denied is that violence is creeping into even the most everyday places. The death of a trooper while protecting others isn't just another news story. It's a warning about a society where safe boundaries are getting thinner. The Bible doesn't spread fear, but it calls us to stay alert. And when personal violence has exploded in ordinary daily life, what will happen when the faith of millions rises up in public? The next part will take us to Serbia. 6. Millions of Christians flood the streets of Serbia, declaring it a Christian nation, a spiritual uprising. On the evening of December 22, as the Christmas lights were just coming on in the old streets of Belgrade, Serbia's capital, a quiet crowd started to gather. It began with small groups, then grew into long lines of people, until the whole city seemed covered in footsteps and prayers. When you watch those videos, you can't help but feel something different. No noise, no chaos, but something deeply meaningful. Belgrade was already tense after the train station collapse that angered so many people. Protests against corruption had been simmering for days. But during the Advent season, that wave of anger started to shift. Students, families, priests, and older folks all came out together, not just to protest the government, but to affirm the nation's faith identity. Reports say the crowd stretched more than 5 miles, blocking major downtown roads for nearly 6 hours straight. Estimates range from 300,000 to over 1 million people. They carried crosses, Serbian flags, sang hymns, and chanted together. Serbia is a Christian nation. No violence, no destruction. Police were out in force but stayed back, as if caught up in the solemn moment. Many believers see these scenes as a symbolic fulfillment of Bible passages. Matthew 24-14 says, "This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." And Revelation 7-9 describes, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb." For a lot of folks, the crowd in Belgrade wasn't just a protest, it was a picture of spiritual awakening in troubled times. Of course, opposing views popped up quickly. Some analysts say it was just politics dressed up as religion, that faith was being used as a tool. But the viral videos show something else: prayers ringing out, priests giving blessings in the square, and tears that didn't look political. Those are hard to fake. No matter how you look at it, you can't deny that amid the unrest, a deep spiritual longing rose up strong. While the world is full of violence and division, the people in Serbia chose to stand together in silence and faith. If faith is rising openly like this in Eastern Europe, what happens when it's suppressed in Western Europe? The next part will take us to Germany. 7. German police crack down on Palestine supporters. Streets turn chaotic. Freedom gets crushed. While Europe is wrapped up in the Christmas spirit, Berlin suddenly turns into a tense hotspot. On December 21, the busy streets of Germany's capital shook as police moved in on a crowd supporting Palestine, kicking off a crackdown that left the whole city holding its breath. What started as a peaceful protest quickly got out of hand. From videos going around, the crowd blocked major roads in downtown Berlin, stretching nearly 2 miles. Chants were cut short by sirens and loud orders. Riot police showed up in force, using batons, chokeholds, and dragging protesters across the cold pavement. The air was thick with chaos and threat. In just a few hours, over 200 people were arrested. Many others got minor injuries, and parts of the city were on lockdown. Eyewitnesses called it like an urban battlefield. Protesters were pushed back, foot by foot. Some dragged dozens of feet through the yelling crowd in despair. Helicopters circled low overhead. Police set up steel barriers, searched homes, and banned gatherings in sensitive areas. Meanwhile, international human rights groups and the United Nations spoke out against the heavy use of force, saying freedom of speech is being choked right in the heart of Europe. German security experts explained the root cause as ongoing geopolitical tensions, plus worries about domestic security and extremism. The government says strong action was needed to stop violence from escalating. But social analysts warn, when talk gets replaced by batons, society slips fast into confrontation. The line between keeping order and suppression is getting dangerously blurry. In this situation, many see an echoing warning from the Bible. Matthew 24-9 says, "Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me." And 2 Timothy 3:12 reminds, "In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted." These verses aren't meant to judge who's right or wrong, but to alert us that the end times will be marked by rising persecution, suppression, and fear. Of course, some say the police actions were necessary to protect national security. But the scarier question is, if violence becomes the default response of those in power, how long can freedom hold up? When fear spreads, society easily accepts new limits without realizing the cost. The event in Berlin isn't just a suppressed protest. It's a warning. The world is entering a phase where conflict, control, and suppression could become the new normal. The Bible said these days would come not to spread fear, but to wake people up and get them ready. 7 news stories, 7 different pieces, but they all point the same way. The world is shaking. And the real question isn't what's next, but are we ready to face that future? And please let us know in the comments which event makes my warnings hit home the clearest for you. 7 events, 7 different places, 7 pieces that seem unrelated, but when you put them side by side, they paint a picture you can't ignore. These aren't just random accidents or stories you'll forget after reading the news. They're a rush of warning signs, overlapping and spreading from Europe to America, from Asia to Europe, touching everyday life, cultural icons, and people's faith. In Italy, a tanker truck exploded on the highway, tearing it apart and lighting up the sky with flames right around Christmas. In the US, a nursing home collapsed in a massive fire, taking the lives of some of the most vulnerable folks. In Indonesia, a busy market burned down in just hours, turning lifetimes of hard work into ashes. Places that stand for travel, safety, and making a living, one after another, they're falling apart. Like the foundations of normal life are shaking at the roots. Then there's Disneyland, the happiest place on earth, where a fire swallowed up an entertainment icon just before Christmas. The dragon-catching fire didn't just scare the crowds. It raised questions. When a symbol of evil burns itself up in front of thousands, is it just a technical glitch or something deeper, like a warning? Along with the fires and collapses comes outright violence. A gunman opened fire in an administrative office in Delaware, killing a police officer. In Berlin, batons and handcuffs took the place of talking things out, turning streets into battle lines. Order is kept by force, while freedom gets pushed down under fear. Things that used to seem rare are starting to feel normal. In the middle of all this darkness, Serbia stands out as an odd bright spot. Hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, poured into the streets, not to destroy, but to pray. No angry shouting, just singing hymns. No fighting back, just declaring their faith. Amid political chaos, a quiet spiritual uprising is happening, like some force is pulling people the other way, waking them up. When you line up these 7 events, the scary part isn't the size of each one, it's the rhythm. They hit fast, close together in time, spread out across the world, and affect every kind of person. The elderly, workers, families having fun, law enforcement, protesters, believers. Nobody's outside the storm. The Bible described this exact picture thousands of years ago. Matthew 24:7-8 says, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains." That word beginning is chilling because it means what we're seeing isn't the peak yet. It's not just disasters and violence. The Bible also talks about people's hearts growing cold. Matthew 24:12 warns, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold." When nursing homes burn, when innocent people get dragged in the streets, when death becomes everyday news, numbness creeps in like a quiet sickness. At the same time, the Bible talks about a final awakening. Matthew 24:14 says, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." Serbia isn't random. Those crowds praying aren't just a fluke. It's a sign that when darkness gets thicker, light starts gathering too. And the picture wraps up with a serious warning about persecution. 2 Timothy 3:1 says, "But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days, not just hard times economically or politically, but tough for holding on to faith, truth, and basic humanity under pressure from fear and control." These 7 events don't stand alone. They're like 7 alarm bells ringing from all directions, each with its own tone, but all hitting at the same moment in history. The world isn't slowly sliding into chaos. It's already stepped into it. The clock isn't ticking gently anymore. It's counting down. The question isn't, will the end times come or not? It's, where do we stand in this picture? Are we asleep in the middle of the party, panicking in the crowd, or staying alert in the chaos? The Bible wasn't written to scare us, but to call us to get ready. Humanity's time isn't as long as we think. The signs are lining up, the pieces are fitting together, and the picture is getting clearer every day. The end times aren't some far-off idea anymore. They're knocking on doors in every country, every city, every person. And the final question nobody can answer for you: are you ready? The 7 events we've just gone over are different in where they happened, how they unfolded, and how serious they were. But when you put them side by side, they stop feeling scattered. They fit together into one big picture of a world that's cracking at its foundations, a place where nature is shaking, society is in chaos, people are divided, freedoms are being squeezed, and fear is spreading like a thick fog with no way out. 7 signs, 7 warning bells, ringing one after another, fast and urgent, not giving humanity any more time to ignore them. Looking at the whole thing, this isn't just political crisis, or just social conflict, or just natural disasters. The Bible painted this picture a long time ago, like a roadmap for anyone willing to listen. Matthew 24:6-8 says it plain. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. What we're seeing isn't the end. It's the signs pointing to it. Time, according to the Bible, has never been endless. Romans 13:11 warns, our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. When events speed up, when chaos stops being the exception and becomes the new normal, that's when we need to pause and ask ourselves, where are we headed? And where is our soul in all this? But God's message isn't only a warning, it's also an invitation full of mercy. Ezekiel 18:23 says, do I take any pleasure in the death of the wicked, declares the sovereign Lord? Rather, am I not pleased when they turn from their ways and live? Right in the middle of this storm we're living through, the door to repentance is still open, prayers are still heard, and grace is still waiting for any heart that's willing to turn back. So, if anything sticks with you after these 7 events, let it not be fear, but a wake-up call. This is the time for each of us to take a hard look at ourselves, set aside pride, repent before God, and pray for our families, our country, and this hurting world. Matthew 24:44 reminds us, therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. We invite you, right now, to leave a comment below with a prayer, a thought, or just how you're honestly feeling about these 7 events. It might be worry, it might be faith, or maybe just a quiet cry to the Lord. You never know. Your words could touch someone who's lost and searching. If these messages mean something to you, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the warnings in the videos to come. Every interaction helps spread the word and brings the light of God's truth a little closer to hearts that are looking for hope. Thank you for staying with us to the very end. May the Lord give you peace, wisdom, and watchfulness today and in the days ahead. The world is moving faster than we can catch our breath. Do you feel like time is getting squeezed, with events piling up right before Christmas? Like somebody's speeding up the clock on history? Or maybe we're just standing in front of something really big and really close? In just a few short days, seas have been blocked by warships. The ground has suddenly erupted. Floods have swallowed whole towns. Man-made lights have flashed in the dark. The sky has been torn apart by technology. Society has been ripped by religion. And even modern cities have plunged into blackness. No time to breathe. No time to understand. Just a feeling of chaos spreading fast. Is it all just random? Or are these pieces falling exactly where they're supposed to? If you think there's still plenty of time, pay close attention. Because the news stories coming up will show you what a chaotic world future might really look like. And I won't keep you waiting long, because right now, we're going to start with 1. U.S. Coast Guard seizes Venezuelan oil tanker. Picture this. A dark night on the ocean off Venezuela, suddenly lit up by searchlights as a huge oil tanker loaded with millions of barrels of thick black crude gets surrounded from all sides. You can imagine the scene. A massive metal ship moving slowly through the waves, with fast Coast Guard vessels closing in tight, making the sea feel like it's boiling over, just like those old warnings about troubled times ahead. On December 21st, in international waters off Venezuela, the U.S. Coast Guard moved in and seized the second tanker from the sanctioned Shadow Fleet. Reuters and Al Jazeera both reported that this wasn't just a routine check. It was a deliberate operation amid rising tensions in world politics. The background makes it all feel even heavier. Back during President Trump's time, Washington stepped up efforts to stop Venezuela from getting around sanctions, with one tanker already seized earlier. Now, the next target, called Bella 1, is being chased hundreds of miles off the Venezuelan coast, according to ABC News and Axios, showing this campaign isn't slowing down. The videos that came out left people shaken. American ships speeding in, special forces jumping right onto the deck, taking control of the crew and sealing off the cargo. Military.com called it the second action in just days, enough to push U.S.-Venezuela relations to the breaking point, like a rope pulled too tight. In all this, the Bible comes to mind with a chilling reminder. Luke 21:25 says, "There will be signs, and nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea." The ocean today isn't just rough from politics. Revelation 16:3 also talks about the sea turning like blood, and the spreading black oil on the water brings to mind warnings about pollution, conflict, and destruction. Of course, arguments broke out right away. Supporters say the U.S. is protecting international order and rules, while opponents call it dangerous provocation. But Axios pointed out this is part of a bigger, escalating military effort, not just one-off decisions, and that's what's raising fears about global instability. One thing's clear: the sea is stirred up, not just on military maps, but in people's minds too. When money, oil, and military power clash, the results often go way beyond what anyone expects. And this might be another warning sign that the world is getting closer to those days the Bible talked about, urging us all to take a hard look, stay alert, and turn things around before it's too late. 2. A small explosion at Black Diamond Pool in Yellowstone National Park. One surprising moment broke the quiet in Yellowstone. No alarms, no countdown, just a strong burst from underground, with hot mud and steam shooting straight up into the sky. It was all caught clearly on webcam, enough to give you chills. The video spread fast, like nature had just grabbed everyone's attention. On the morning of December 20, in the Biscuit Basin area of Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, Black Diamond Pool suddenly erupted. Fox Weather and East Idaho News confirmed the mud explosion happened out of nowhere, with no evacuation warnings beforehand. We didn't just hear about it, we saw it with our own eyes, through the shaky frames filled with steam. Yellowstone isn't some stranger to this kind of thing. It's the biggest supervolcano in North America, with a geothermal system always simmering down below. According to the USGS, small mud eruptions like this have happened before, but they're rarely caught on camera as clearly as this one. That's what made the unease spread quicker than the hot steam rising from the pool. Around 9:23 inches the morning Mountain Time, Hot mud and water exploded forcefully, shooting up hundreds of feet, as AccuWeather reported. No one got hurt, no buildings were damaged, but the ground shook, and that moment was enough to hold your breath if you were watching. You could really feel it. If it had happened just a few hours, or a few steps different, things could have turned out worse. Scientists were quick to calm folks down. They called it a normal geothermal event, from built-up pressure underground getting released. But when you put that explanation next to the Bible, another way of looking at it comes up. Revelation 8-5 talks about fire thrown down to the earth, with thunder, lightning, and earthquakes. Isaiah 24-19 says plain out, "The earth will break apart. The earth will shake violently." Two views, one from science, one from faith, running side by side, but both agreeing on one thing: the ground down there isn't settled anymore. That's why the argument started up. One side says we shouldn't blow the fear out of proportion, since Yellowstone is still being watched closely and safely. The other side, like what Fox 2 Detroit pointed out, warns that more frequent and stronger geothermal activity is a sign of bigger unrest under the earth, and we can't brush it off. When normal keeps happening too often, the line between steady and warning gets blurry. No matter what you call this event, it reminds us there are forces way beyond what people can control. And maybe, like the Bible says, the Lord is shaking the earth, not to destroy it right away, but to wake us up before it's too late. 3. Serious flash flooding in Redding, California. Everything came apart in just a few short minutes. Water poured down from out of nowhere, sweeping away cars, blocking streets, and turning familiar roads in Redding, Shasta County, into chaotic rivers. On December 21st, the flash flood hit without any warning siren, forcing rescue teams into a race against time as people could only huddle out of the way of the powerful water. According to the Redding Record Searchlight and ABC News, many cars were almost completely swallowed up, with water rising several feet in no time. The background made it even scarier. A storm that sat still for 4.5 hours, dumping 2 to 6 inches of rain, causing widespread power outages and bringing the city to a standstill, as reported by CNN. Once the water receded, the New York Times confirmed one person had died, leaving a heavy silence amid the mud and twisted metal. The speed of the disaster didn't give anyone time to prepare. Warnings went out, but the flood came faster than any plans. We see pictures of rescue vehicles blocked, folks stranded on top of their cars, and that cold question comes up: if this happened to us, would we react in time? Flash floods don't just carry away things, they tear apart that fragile sense of safety we all count on. In that setting, the Bible rings out like a direct warning. Matthew 24:37-39 recalls the days of Noah, when people went about their normal lives right up until the flood came and took them all away. The flash flood in Redding was the same, sudden, brutal, and exposing our built-in complacency. Revelation 12:15 describes a flood pouring out like a river to sweep away, making the images of streets turned into raging currents even more haunting. Weather experts give explanations and warnings. A stationary storm, ground soaked with water, steep terrain speeding up the flow. They say events like this could happen more often, not just in California. These predictions sound scientific, but they lead to the same worrying conclusion. Our human defenses can't keep up with nature's pace, and each unusual event costs more. The scariest part isn't just the damage numbers, but how we get used to disasters. When floods become regular news, our alertness wears down. And as the Bible reminds us, water doesn't just destroy, it also cleanses, revealing what we've ignored for too long. But the story doesn't end there. In the darkness of the flood, with power out and the city quiet, a sudden artificial light appears. That's hope, or maybe just the last illusion before the next waves come rushing in. 4. First responders light up Golisano Children's Hospital in Rochester, New York. On a cold night in Rochester, New York, lights suddenly flashed in the dark. Headlights and red-blue flashing lights cut through the blackness, bouncing off the tall windows of Golisano Children's Hospital. In that moment,